Hi, my name is Jaime Joyce, and I'm executive editor at Time Magazine's classroom edition, Time for Kids. My reporting is on the humanitarian crisis at the U.S. southern border. I was interested in this topic because I'd reported on other refugee movements in the past. So in 2018, we started to hear a lot about the migrant caravans coming from countries in Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, coming to the southern border. And so I did a two-part series for Time for Kids. The first story focuses on Honduras. I traveled to Honduras to see what life is like in the country and what compels people to leave. What are the conditions like that make people feel like they need to leave their home country and try to seek refuge in the United States? The second story that I reported focused on, what happens when you arrive at the border. So I went to Tijuana and reported from shelters and various school programs that are right there in Tijuana, where many, many migrants are waiting as a result of MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols. So thousands of people are waiting in Tijuana for their asylum hearings in U.S. Immigration Court in San Diego. In Tijuana, when I was reporting, the conditions people were living in were really quite challenging. One of the first places I visited was a shelter built for about 45 people, and we had about over 100 people, families, children, living in a very small space. Children had chickenpox, disease and illness spreads very quickly in those kinds of conditions. In another one of the shelters that I visited in Tijuana, people were living in tents. There were some beds set up, but it was just so many people in a very small space with very few services. So that's a tough way to live, and many people are waiting for months at a time in these kinds of conditions. One of the things that was a really pleasant surprise for me on this reporting is to see the education programs that are being provided for children on the U.S. Mexico border. So I visited two programs that I was very impressed by. One was the Yes We Can World Foundation School, and that program is set up alongside a shelter. The kids that attend this program live in the shelter next door, and it was a really joyful learning environment. And it was so special to be able to see kids thriving in a very challenging situation, and to know also that much of that program exists because of the support of many volunteers and donations from people across the United States and around the world. Another one of the education programs I visited was a program called the School Box Project. And so what they do is they have a small school bus, and they visit 3 shelters a week, serving about 150 kids. So I was able to visit one shelter with them, to ride on the bus with them, and to experience their program. One of the things that I hope readers will take away is, first of all, just a deeper understanding of the migration crisis. The children who are reading this article, they've probably heard a lot about this, and this will help them I hope that it will help them to be able to take part in a conversation about it and to develop a deeper understanding. But there's also those kids who, when they're reading this story in classrooms, they might recognize their classmates in this story. At a shelter in San Diego that I visited, I met a family, and they were going to be living in Atlanta as their asylum case moved through the courts. And one of the young people I talked to, his name was David. He was 14 years old, and he was really excited. To be going back to school. He hasn't been in school in several months, about 9 months at this point. So for a child like David to see himself reflected in the pages of Time for Kids, I think is a really wonderful opportunity. And I think for his future classmates to be able to understand his story and why kids like him are coming to the United States, I think that's really important too. And so I hope it will help create a 360 view of the immigration crisis.